July 28th. Don't grumble against one another, brothers and sisters, or you will be judged. James 5:9. The primary sin of the Israelites when they were in the desert on their way to the promised land was not idolatry or immorality, but grumbling. They grumbled about the lack of water and food on multiple occasions. They grumbled about the lack of meat. They grumbled against the leadership of Moses. They grumbled about the harsh conditions in the wilderness. And they grumbled about the obstacles facing them as they entered Canaan. No doubt the conditions were difficult, but God expected His people to trust in Him after all He had done for them. As a result, they constantly came under His judgment. As Psalm 106 puts it, "Then they despised the pleasant land. They did not believe His promise. They grumbled in their tents and did not obey the Lord. So He swore to them with uplifted hand that He would make them fall in the wilderness." The early church was also going through times of stress. In fact, the word for grumbling implies groaning because of pressure. James is writing these words to the disciples in the context of being patient in a time of suffering. Often, in such seasons, we turn on each other, grumbling about leadership, finding people to blame for our problems, speaking against one another. When we do this to each other, we are actually grumbling against God. He knows what we are going through, and yet, just as grumbling was not an option for the Israelites in the wilderness or the early church facing persecution, it is not an option for us. In fact, God calls it wickedness, because grumbling reflects a lack of faith in Him, a lack of gratitude for what He has done, and a lack of surrender to His ways. In the verses before and after today's verse, James gives us several reasons why we should not grumble. 1. We will be judged. 2. Jesus is coming back one day. 3. We have the example of the prophets like Job who were blessed for their perseverance. 4. God is full of compassion and mercy. God has been so good to us, even though we deserve nothing but condemnation and death. Grumbling against Him and even against one another is not an option in His church. Today's prayer: Lord Jesus, help me to never grumble against others in your church.